Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're taking a deep dive into something I think truly fascinating, near-death experiences.
Ooh.
Yeah, those stories where people, like right on the edge of death, report seeing a light or like feeling like they're floating above their body.
Yeah, wild stuff.
It really is. And it's not even like some super rare thing. A study, I think back in 2011, estimated that almost 9 million people in the U.S. alone have had one.
Wow, 9 million. That's a lot.
That's huge. So to figure out, what's going on here, we've got some really cool stuff to dig into. Articles, research from the University of Virginia, even personal stories like Sebastian Junger's experience.
And I think what's really interesting is like as out there as these experiences seem, there's these common threads that run through them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So like, first things first, how do we even define a near-death experience?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? There isn't really one perfect definition that everyone agrees on.
Yeah.
But there are key things we see popping up again and again. Like if you look at the Discover magazine article or the University of Virginia's website, they usually happen when someone's, well, close to death, right? Cardiac arrest, a bad injury, something like that.
Right, makes sense.
And while they're unconscious, they have these super intense, vivid experiences, out-of-body sensations, seeing a bright light, huge feelings of peace, maybe even their whole life flashing before their eyes.
Speaking of which, the University of Virginia has this whole list of these common features on their site. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. And you know what gets me? Sometimes it's little kids who have these experiences. The Discover article has the story about a 3-year-old, John.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
His heart stopped, and later he told his grandma, "When I died, I saw a lady." And then he describes the ambulance ride.
From above.
Exactly, like he was watching it all happen. I mean, how do you explain that?
It's pretty wild, and it makes you wonder, like, how is science even starting to make sense of all this?
Well, it's still a huge puzzle, consciousness during death, you know.
Right, giant mystery.
But the good news is we're getting better at bringing people back. So there are more survivors to study and learn from.
Yeah, I was reading about Dr. Sam Parnia in this AWARE study.
Oh, yeah. Fascinating stuff.
They literally put shelves with pictures in rooms where they thought people might have cardiac arrests.
So if someone was having an out-of-body experience, maybe they could see the images and describe them later.
Exactly. It's like they were trying to catch consciousness, like outside the body.
Pretty clever, huh?
It is. And the results were sort of, well, mixed.
Mixed is a good word for it.
One patient did describe stuff that happened while they were being resuscitated, but not from the shells.
So close, but it's like every little bit we learn just opens up more questions.
Like science is always playing catch up with these experiences.
Totally. And things get even more complicated when we look at end-of-life experiences or ELEs. They're like NDEs, but happen as someone's approaching death, not necessarily during a crisis.
So less of a sudden thing.
Right. Dr. Christopher Kerr works with hospice patients, and he's found they often have these super vivid dreams, visions of loved ones, all that.
But the thing is, they're not in the middle of some medical emergency. They're lucid.
Exactly. It's not just a panicked brain misfiring.
Makes you think, right?
Oh, absolutely. It throws a wrench in the idea that these are just, the brain short-circuiting or something.
So then, what is it?
That's what we're here to figure out.
Okay, I'm in.
And get this, it gets even crazier when you see how similar NDE accounts are across cultures and time periods. Like, it's not just a modern thing.
Yeah, like ancient people were having these too.
Oh, totally. There's this story from like the 5th century BCE about a Chinese ruler, Jianzi.
Jianzi?
Yeah, Jianzi. He had an NDE and met this guy, didn't recognize him. But then later in life, he runs into the same guy who's like, "Yeah, we met in the spirit world, remember?"
No way.
Seriously. It's like these experiences are tapping into something universal, something that goes deeper than any one culture.
Like a shared human experience.
Exactly. There's even Raymond Moody's 9-step model and Kenneth Ring's 5 stages, both trying to, capture these common threads.
So of all these common threads,
Yeah.
is there one that stands out to you? Like the most powerful part of these stories?
That's a good question. For me, it's the encounters with deceased loved ones. It's just so powerful and honestly so relatable. Like in Sebastian Junger's book, In My Time of Dying, he talks about his own NDE.
Oh, yeah, that's a heavy one.
It is. He's in the hospital losing blood fast from this aneurysm they didn't even know he had.
Scary.
Right. He's slipping away and he sees this pit of blackness opening up under him. And then
His dad appears.
exactly.
Yeah.
And his dad's comforting him, tells him he doesn't have to fight anymore. He can come with him. It's such a powerful image.
And the way Younger writes about it, you can just feel his struggle to make sense of it all.
It's that constant battle between what we think we know about the world and these experiences that just blow it all wide open.
So what are we left with? Just a dying brain firing off random signals? Or is it like something more? A connection that goes beyond this life?
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question, and it's one we're going to dive into next. We've talked about what NDEs are, how they happen, even the historical and cultural side of things, but now we got to get to the heart of it.
The big so what?
Exactly. What do these experiences mean? What do they teach us about consciousness, life, and, well, what might be waiting for us after it's all over?
Yeah, the big so what? Like, where do we even go from here?
Right. It's the question, isn't it? It's had, like, scientists and philosophers scratching their heads forever.
I bet.
But okay, let's try to break it down. Look at some of the science-y explanations out there. Like the Discover article talks about a bunch of theories.
Okay, so we got stuff like the dying brain hypothesis, right? Like
Yeah.
NDEs are just hallucinations because the brain's shutting down.
Exactly. And then there's the oxygen deprivation theory. No oxygen, weird experiences.
Makes sense? Then there's the whole idea that it's like a coping mechanism.
Right? The mind trying to deal with being so close to death.
Heavy stuff. And then there's that, what was it, DMT?
Ah, yes, DMT, dimethyltryptamine. It's a psychedelic compound that's, get this, naturally in our brains.
Whoa, wait, back up. What's DMT? Like for those of us who didn't take, brain chemistry 101.
Oh, good point. So DMT, it's this powerful psychedelic found in humans, plants, animals, all sorts of places. And it's linked to, like, altered states of consciousness, you know? Some cultures even use it for spiritual stuff.
Interesting. And the idea is that maybe when we're near death, our brains just release a bunch of it.
Exactly. And that could be what's causing the visions, the weird sensations, all that.
But here's what I don't get. If it's just random brain stuff or chemicals, how come the experiences are so similar across cultures? Like, you'd think it'd be more random.
It's the million-dollar question. Even the scientists who are all about the biological stuff, they struggle with that one.
Yeah, it's like, why don't we see these kinds of visions when people are, like, meditating super hard or on other psychedelics?
Right. There's something unique about NDEs that's hard to explain away with just, neurons firing.
Makes you wonder if we need to look beyond the material world, right?
I think we might. If science can't fully explain it, maybe it's time to consider other possibilities.
Like what?
Well, for starters, what if consciousness isn't completely tied to the brain? What if it can exist on its own?
Whoa, okay, that's a big one.
It is. But think about it. Consciousness, even in its everyday form, is still a mystery.
True.
NDEs just like shine a giant spotlight on that mystery.
Yeah, and the Psychology Today article we looked at, it talks about how time gets all messed up during NDEs.
Oh, yeah, that's a trippy one.
People say their thoughts are racing, their whole life flashes before their eyes, but like instantly, how does that even work?
It's like our understanding of time, past, present, future, it just doesn't apply.
So are we saying NDEs are proof of an afterlife? Or are they just some crazy brain trick we don't get yet?
I don't think we can say for sure either way. But just because we don't have all the answers doesn't mean we can't learn something from all of this.
Okay, so what are we learning?
Well, for me, the biggest thing is how universal these experiences are. Different cultures, different times, same themes.
Right, like it's something deeper than just, what we're taught or where we come from.
Exactly. It points to something that's, like, fundamentally human,
And I think even if we can't prove or disprove the afterlife thing, NDEs still make us think about the big questions, right? Life, death, what it means to be conscious.
Absolutely. They make us appreciate how precious life is.
And think about the stuff that really matters, like love, connection, compassion.
Yes. It's like they're
Yeah.
giving us a peek into a different way of being, a way that's less about, stuff and more about those core values.
And pushing us to be more open to what we don't know, to accept that there might be way more to the universe than we can even imagine.
It's like, remember that line from Hamlet? There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And a good reminder to, like, not shut down possibilities just because they're weird or scary or don't fit in with what we think we know.
Absolutely. But then that brings up another question. What does all this mean for us, the ones who haven't had an NDE? How do we make sense of it in our own lives?
That's what I keep coming back to, honestly. Like, it's one thing to talk about it, but how do we actually live differently because of it?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? And honestly, I think each person has to find their own answer to that.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple of thoughts based on, all the stuff we've looked at.
Okay, lay it on me.
First, I think we got to be humble about it. We don't have all the answers, and that's okay.
Yeah, there's so much we still don't get about the brain, consciousness, death, all that.
Right. And second, we got to listen to these stories with an open mind, even if they make us uncomfortable or challenge what we believe.
Because these are real people, real experiences.
Exactly. And when you look at the common themes like that peace, the love, the connection, the realization that material things don't matter as much, there's wisdom there, even if you don't believe in an afterlife or anything.
It's like they're giving us a glimpse of a different way of being, a better way, maybe.
Right. A way that prioritizes love and compassion over, getting ahead or accumulating stuff.
And maybe that glimpse can, like, inspire us to actually live differently,
Yeah.
to be more present, more kind, more grateful.
To cherish the moments we have, nurture our relationships, and try to leave the world a little better than we found it.
Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right?
Yeah.
How we live, how we treat each other, the impact we make.
You got it. And maybe that's like the ultimate takeaway from all this NDE stuff.
Wow. Okay, I think I need a minute to process all that.
Me too.
I know, right? It's a lot to take in. But, even if we don't have all the answers about NDEs, just thinking about all this has been, like, mind-blowing.
It really has. And while all the research and stories have been so interesting, I'm curious, what's our listener thinking? What are some of the things that have stood out to you during this whole deep dive?
Ooh, yeah, good question. I think for me, it's how NDEs and ELEs, really challenge what we think we know about consciousness. We always think of it as being, like, so connected to the brain.
Yeah, totally.
But these experiences, they kind of suggest that it might be something, well, bigger.
It's a wild thought, isn't it? And it connects back to the thing we talked about before, how time seems to like warp during these experiences.
It's a bit of a real time.
Like our normal way of thinking about time, past, present, future, it just kind of goes out the window.
That's hard to wrap your head around.
It is. And it makes you think maybe, just maybe, there are parts of reality that we don't have the tools to understand with our normal senses and way of thinking.
So then here's what I'm wondering. What if consciousness isn't limited to our brains? What if it can exist like outside of time, outside of our bodies?
Okay, yeah, we're getting into some deep territory now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But if that's even a possibility, how does that change how we live our lives right now?
Whoa, that's a huge question. I think maybe it pushes us to be more aware of how connected everything is. Like, if consciousness isn't just stuck in our individual brains, then maybe there's a deeper connection between us all,
It's like that feeling people describe in NDEs, that sense of overwhelming love and unity.
Yeah, exactly. Like a glimpse of a reality where there's no separation. We're all just like part of this one big thing.
Okay, that's pretty profound. And if that's true, or even possible, it changes everything. How we think about compassion, empathy, how we treat each other.
Totally. It's not just about me anymore. It's about us.
It makes you rethink the whole point of life, too. If death isn't the end, but more like a transition, then shouldn't we be focusing on living a life that, well, that matters?
Living authentically, going after what's important to you, making a difference in the world.
And maybe even facing death with less fear.
Yeah, and more like curiosity. Seeing it as a transition, not an ending.
A transition to something we can't fully grasp, but can still, be open to, wonder about.
Beautifully put. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of NDEs.
It really has been quite a journey.
It has. And to our listener, keep exploring these ideas, keep asking those tough questions, and never lose that sense of wonder.
You never know what mysteries are waiting to be discovered. And, well, maybe we'll see you on the other side.
Maybe we will.
Until then, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.